Hello and welcome back to another episode of Not a Minimum Viable podcast. How have you been, Manit? How's work?
Work is good. I've been back at work for over a month now. I got an email the other day being like, how's your first month been? And we had to like update some stats and some like internal documents. And I was like, it's been a month? That's insane. And I was talking to somebody else at work. And I was like, I can't believe it's been a month. And she just goes, it feels like it's been a year. And I was like, dude, relax. It's been 1 month. This is the rest of your life. Relax. But no, it's been pretty good. I like for context, I interned at the same place last year where I've gone back, and that's been a big, I think, plus because I just know a lot of familiar faces, and for me, that was like a big draw. Like being in an environment that I want to go to every day. I don't think I could work at a big corporate if it was like I hated my job every single day. Like I think that would be too much. But so far, it's been a lot of fun, and tiring, and like I have a lot less time for like things I want to do outside of work. Because some days I come home and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna read this, and I'm gonna work on this, and I'm gonna go meet this person, and then I'm like, I kind of just want to sleep. Like I don't want to do that. What about you? Since you ended your internship, how are things looking?
Yeah, so it's been it's only been almost 3 weeks since I ended my internship at Amazon. Feels like it's been much longer,
Mm-hmm.
but the week it ended, I got a couple of days of rest because of the long weekend, and then it was just school stuff all the way. And then within that first week, I realized that I'm not built to sit in lectures anymore. I struggle to get through a 2 hour lecture, which is insane.
It took you 1 week, especially considering first week is just like syllabus and like
Oh yeah.
bare bones setup for what the semester is
Yeah,
gonna look
dude,
like.
I haven't been to any class since that first week. I can
Yeah,
I can
no.
get by with the recordings and the lecture slides for most of my classes. So
I mean, you're lucky they have recordings. Most of my classes didn't even have any of that. Like, you just had to be there. And like, actually, in my last year, all of my courses had participation grades as well. Like, in the sense that it's not attendance, but it's like you have to contribute in some way or the other during each
like,
lecture
if
to
I'm
get it.
being honest, I'm willing to like let go of the participation marks for the lectures, because at least like
Mm,
in the tutorial, I can talk to other people. I can like ask questions and everything.
yeah.
I'm not going to do that in the lecture, so there's no point in me showing up. I feel like I
Yeah.
can get more done in those 2 hours if I was to just go through the slides myself, having done the readings.
I honestly think that's a pretty decent way to do it because like some profs I think are doing a bit too much. I had a class where participation was like 25% or something of the grade, and I was just sitting there thinking like there is no real objective way for you to like properly measure this across everybody in this class through just lectures, and to have such a big chunk of your like final grade attached to that. Like you could do great on the exams, you could do a great assignment, like research project, whatever you want, and then just because like you don't like asking too many questions or answering other people's questions during a lecture, you don't get like 20% of the grade. I think it's a bit
Yeah.
messed up.
I was actually just talking on this subject. I was reading an interesting Medium post about this earlier
Hmm.
today, about how university is like a pull-based system, whereas high school and before was a push-based system. So in high school, you have your teachers, you have your counselors, everybody's there to like push you to do things. Whereas
Right.
in university, you're given the resources, and it's up to you to pull yourself up and get the things you need to get done to hit whatever milestones you need to hit. So you're doing the pulling and you're putting in the effort yourself to do these things. There's nobody behind you to push you to do these, which is why I feel like having all these resources in terms of like lecture notes, slides available to
Hmm.
me just makes it easier for me to get it done at my time, at my speed, at my pace. Which I mean, I guess the lecture is for that, but I don't get the same amount of like learning per hour done in the lecture that I do outside.
When you said push pull, like the first thing I was thinking in my head was that it was gonna be um, about how high school is a lot more templated and you basically don't have a lot of options for things. Like, everyone's taking like, whether if you're doing AP, like everyone's taking one AP class or four AP classes or whatever, and you kind of stick within your stream based on where you want to go to school after that. Whereas in university, especially for at least liberal arts education systems, there's a lot more freedom to choose what you want to do, and if you don't like something, to drop it and shift and move on. So in that sense, it's a pull in terms of your interests and your like passion, as opposed to, oh, I have to do XYZ thing, otherwise I'm not going to graduate high school, and it has to be just these specific. Like there's no options. I have to take either, this math class, either AB or BC, and I have to do this, science course. Whereas in university, it's like, oh, I'm taking a theater minor just because.
I get that, but like even if you look at it outside of the structure, like those systems of push and pull exist. Like
Yeah,
I'd
no, that's
argue that
fair.
like even now, some high schools are designed to have high school be like a transition to university in every sense of the way. Like they give students the ability to like have free lecture slots or whatever during the day, such
Right.
that the student gets used to things like these. Like students have the
I
ability
was
to pursue whatever club they want to do in high school because it's an experience similar to what happens in university. So like structures like those exist, but the underlying reasoning here is that even within that structure of high school, you have teachers and mentors that are pushing you to do
mm-hmm.
other things or things within those opportunities, I guess, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Where are these high schools, dude? I wish I had that because I I remember taking like woodworking, like carpentry, as like an elective just for fun. It was not graded or anything. It was just like 2 hours or 3 hours a week. I would just do that, and they only let us take it till like the eighth grade, and after that, like it was compulsory that you couldn't do it. So sometimes I would like take like my lunch break or recess, and I would just go there because the teacher there liked me, and he just let me like hang out in his studio and work on things. And for a while that was fun, but I wish that it was like you had to take it. Like even in like your last 2 years of high school, you should be allowed to take things like that, like electives.
I do think it depends on like what I forgot what the term is. Like you know how in high school some people take like IB, others take AP curriculum.
Right,
There you
school
go.
board or
Yeah,
curriculum,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Whichever like school board or curriculum you take, it depends on that. Because
Yeah,
yeah,
probably. But it's still like I just wish other school boards would also adapt to some things that, some things are just good for students. Like it's not about whether or not you have a certain way of teaching. Like there should be more flexibility. And from what I've heard, I think like IB is probably like the ideal one in terms of being able to find that.
I did IB and it had its highs and lows.
Hmm.
But yeah, you definitely. I don't know if electives was a thing in IB. I don't remember. It's been a while.
Okay,
But
fair.
at least up to like the last 2 years. So for me, in the 4 years of high school, the first 2 years were IGCSEs, which is
Okay,
like the precursor to like A levels or something like that.
right.
And then the last 2 years was the IB diploma for me. So in the last 2 years, it was a very structured environment in terms of the courses I had to take because it had to align with like some like two sciences at most. You had to take one or two languages. You had to take English, something like that. So in those lines, I couldn't take something like design and tech, which is like the equivalent of woodworking.
Right, right,
But
right.
I could do that in my IGCSEs, and I did. So there's different like levels of electives almost,
Right.
depending
But I
on what
guess
you
that's
do.
consistent with like your last 2 years before university. It's like very structured. They're trying
Yeah,
to get you into schools, so you have to
yeah.
hit a certain. Yeah, that's fair. I hope it changes to some extent.
On a different note, turns out almost everybody has been getting sick this past weekend.
Dude, I know. You were sick, and then like I was hanging out with a couple of my other friends, and one of them is sick. Like I was just getting texts from her right now being like, "Oh, I'm feeling sick, like just make sure like you're okay," and things like that. And I've been like a couple of days in the past week, I've woken up feeling like, am I gonna be sick? And I've like skipped my workout on my run that day, being like, I don't want to put extra pressure on my body. And so far, touch wood, so good. But it's stressful, dude. I don't like falling sick.
Yeah, I like talked to a couple of different people. They've also been sick this past weekend. Even my mom and brother, who are on the other side of the world,
Oh,
were
that's
sick on the
strange.
exact same weekend.
Family bonding.
Oh yeah, the highest level.
Dude, I remember being like, you know, 2020 during COVID. Like the only time I had COVID was back in India, and my entire house got COVID. Like we were all sick in our rooms and everything. I binged watched Grey's Anatomy for the first time, in that like 1 week period. I'm pretty sure I watched like 9 seasons of it in a week or something like that. I was
Wow.
just like like it was like burnt into my retina. I was like that hospital and everything in that show. It was too much. It was unhealthy, but wow. Like if I hadn't done that, I would never have watched that show in my life. But I did that, and honestly, worth it.
I mean, I haven't seen that show, but when I was sick this weekend, I binge watched Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I feel like you pointed it out the other day as well.
Yeah,
Like you saw it on Netflix. Yeah, what a show, man! What a story.
it's my number one anime. I think I can always go back to it. Like the story, like the reveals, everything, like how gritty it is. Like it doesn't feel like even though there are some lighthearted moments, it doesn't dilute the story in any way. Like that is so
It's
good.
not rushed, and like everything
Yeah.
ties in together. Like all the questions you have and whatever's done, like logically
Mm-hmm.
leads into other parts of the plot.
Yeah,
It's very
and I like
cool.
the philosophical element of it as well. Like every time when they're exploring it through like the lens of the sins, and the way the characters are written around them is so good. Like honestly, it is incredible writing. Um, but I never watched Full Metal, like the one like before Brotherhood, like the long version. But Brotherhood was
Yeah,
incredible, man.
I've heard there's some issues with the previous version, at least in with like the ending and how they structured it. There were some parts of the ending that people felt were quite disjointed with the rest of the story, which is what they adapted and removed and rewrote in Brotherhood to make it more cohesive. And I guess it's reflected with how Brotherhood has been received by the public.
Fair. What are your thoughts on Attack on Titan? Did you end up finishing
Yeah,
watching?
I think it's really good. The more you watch Attack on Titan, the more you realize that like everything ties in together. Like it's hard to see those things at the start unless you've like watched the whole thing.
I really liked it in the beginning, but then towards the like when the final like quote unquote final season started, where they kept making like different parts of it and extensions of it and things like that, I just got really tired with the whole thing, and I just could not follow the story after a point, and I
But
left it.
but was that because of the story itself or because of how they were handling the release
Well, yeah,
of
I
everything?
think it's the second thing more than anything else, because I was just not getting any of the story. Like it all just felt so lost and like broken apart to me that I just got tired, and I was like,
Yeah,
this
see,
is
when I watched Attack on Titan, it was close to or after the whole thing had been released.
okay.
So for me, it felt like a cohesive thing. So I was able to enjoy the story without any of like the other parts coming in to play.
That's fair. I think it is a really good show. At least this first few seasons. I never read the manga for that, but I don't know how it is. I did see that the Demon Slayer movie is out. I really want to go watch that. Even the trailer for that kind of looked not great. Like just as far as trailers go. JJK, new season's coming. That should be fun. That manga really
Questionable,
is
yeah.
is
It's too
very
much, yeah.
questionable. I'm not a fan of the way it's written, but the anime is sick, so we'll watch that.
I think they'll probably fix a lot of those issues in the anime. I mean, you can't
Yeah,
have like 20 minutes explanation in the anime, you know? Like
exactly.
that's not how it's done.
It's too much. It's too much. I start losing like a sense of the characters and the story after like 3 pages of being explained pseudophysics about how the magic works in this like realm or domain, and I'm like, I'm over it. Like, let's talk about the story now.
Yeah, fair. Cool. Talking about stories, I think we should move on to the segment where we have our actual guest on now.
Oh yeah, true. Because we were talking a bit about storytelling, specifically like how a lot of founders these days, when you're building in public, like you have to have storytelling skills and how you're telling the story of your process and your journey. And he had some interesting takes on that. I think that at least to me stood out as one of the things we talked about. I don't know if you have a take on that before we let everyone else be privy to that.
Particularly, I think storytelling is still important, but just
Yeah.
the medium through which you tell the story, whether it is through building in public or the way you build the product, the way you present it to investors, like all that is so different. So I can't really say storytelling is good or bad without
Right.
choosing one or the other medium through which it's delivered.
Yeah, and I think like being able to adapt your story to the medium you're telling it through is going to become more and more important, especially for founders who go like we'll make reels and we'll put out like short clips of us like talking about this, and so that has to be so much more fast paced, and you stick to the exact like top line items you want people to focus
Exactly.
on, as opposed to people building like long form YouTube videos. where they're like breaking down every step of the setup and every step of the mediation process, things like that.
Yeah, the story that goes into either of those mediums is so different. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah, the skills needed to make one and convey a story through one are really, really different from the other.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, but like, I don't know if it was A16Z or something else, but people have like started hiring for these like viral content creator type roles where they're just looking for people who have like hacked these like algorithms of TikTok and Instagram and everything to produce these viral clips and reels that essentially help with like distribution.
Yeah.
It's a very like pivotal moment when it comes to how software and startup and entrepreneurship is being done.
It is definitely interesting. Like I'm curious to see where this goes, whether this like stays around long term. My own hunch is it won't, like it'll fizzle out. Like investors are gonna start seeing through that after a point when everyone starts doing it. Because initially it's about like how well you're being able to convey, I guess, the message of your product. So like the message still has to be there. You just did a better job conveying it so it went viral, as opposed to like now founders hiring people to try and sell a viral story even when it isn't. I think like people are going to start seeing through that soon enough. That's my take on it, but we'll find out, I guess.
Yeah, it's a story for a different time.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's get into the episode.
Okay, in today's episode, we're joined by Rowan, a software engineer turned founder who's built some fascinating companies in the AI space. After working at the payments unicorn Checkout.com, he left to found Casa Platform, the UK's first AI rental agent that reached thousands of users before he made the tough decision to shut it down. He's currently working on his next venture in the stealth startup world, and he brings a unique perspective on the entrepreneurial journey. Welcome to Not a Minimum Viable podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me on. It was cool to have met you. I've been in Toronto for a week, and so yeah, new beginnings, new journey, new company, and a pretty good and concise summary of everything I've done. So yeah, immigrant kid, went to the UK when I was young, became a software engineer, was fortunate enough to work at a cool company, built some cool stuff there, and then started to understand like how is AI going to disrupt different verticals and different industries. Ended up building the first consumer AI rental agent, and the idea behind that was like, how can we democratize the kind of services that the ultra wealthy get? So the ultra wealthy never have a problem finding housing because they can just throw money at the problem. And so now, I mean, it's possible that AI removes a lot of the administrative burden that is required to find a place. And we captured something, and we had thousands of monthly active users. We didn't really want to spend a bunch of time focused on conversion, and so having to optimize how many of our monthly users are paying us. Again, we made decent money, but nothing crazy. And so I think we should be spending our youth working on a moonshot. I think that's one thing I said to Rudy when we met recently. It's like, your 20s should be spent on the big thing, because if we wanted to run a business, and I've run a couple in the past, agencies and whatever, then anybody can go do that, right? And so let's focus on the hard problems. Let's focus on the real applications of AI that have the most possible return.
Wow, that's incredible to hear. And honestly, before we get into like a lot of the work that you've already done, I just want to have a quick intro into Toronto for you. Like, what has that been like so far? Like, what are you liking? What are you not liking? Because a lot of our listeners are, based here, so I'm sure they'd be curious to hear.
Yeah, I think honestly the jet lag just wore off like yesterday or 2 days ago maybe. Yeah, very fresh. It's definitely the most last minute trip I've ever done. So far I like it. I think honestly the biggest pain point for people who are here or from here is the currency being weak, which for me is good, but for you guys probably not so much. And so
Right.
I think it's probably a pretty great place to be if you're earning in USD and spending in CAD. Um, but yeah, like I've been warned about the winters, so I'm not sure. I guess I'll have to find out for myself at some point. But outside of that, the weather's pretty good. It's better than the UK. It's US looking. Maybe to everyone who's from here, it isn't, but to us it is. Wide roads, whatever. The flora and the fauna is similar. Like I've never been to Michigan, but I'm sure if I went to Detroit or whatever, that it can't be that much different. I imagine that the climate is similar and that kind of thing. Like I went to Niagara Falls recently, and I saw like the US side of it, and it was just kind of surreal to me that like that's the US. Like it's like 300 meters across the water, and so yeah, I think it's a good place to be. I wouldn't complain if
That's the
if I was
funniest
a builder
part,
here.
though. Yeah, that's the funniest part about Niagara. They don't see the great view of the falls, even though they have the falls on their side. The view is over here, so it's honestly a good experience going from this side. Glad you got to do that.
Thank you.
Could you recount what well, like what was taking place in the lead up to you coming to Canada? Because as you mentioned, 24-hour notice and whatnot.
Yeah. I was planning on heading back to the US and then hit some hurdles. It was a very last minute trip back to the US, thinking that I'd spend some time there with the folks at the residency and kind of absorbing what I could from there. Immigration disagreed that I should be going back so soon, which is fair. General advice is that you take some time off once you've been out there a while. And so I totally understand that. And yeah, my immigration case kind of didn't work out. I had an ESTA that had expired, and so I need to renew that. And so we'll see. I will probably do that soon at some point. I still think the US is a great place to be. I still think that everybody should have exposure to San Francisco before they go back to their like homeland and start building startups and whatever. At least it will make it easier. It will give you that kind of energy and push that you need required to build something really big and meaningful. And yeah, like that 24 hours was me going from London to where should I go that's on a US time zone so that it's easier for me to kind of, bridge everything across what we're doing right now. And yeah, Canada was the place. I knew some friends here. A friend of mine is lucky enough to have tweeted for me, and things began to fall into place. So I called my friend and I said, hey, I need a tweet. And he's like, oh, well, I can introduce you to so-and-so, whatever. I'm like, I don't need introductions. I need a tweet, bro. Like, just tweet for me right now. I don't know where I'm going to go from the airport. I'm going to be there a couple of weeks. And yeah, I was fortunate enough that some friends in SF reached out to me and said like, hey, we can arrange for you to stay at this place and whatever. And so everything kind of happened day by day. As I said, it's literally been 8 days now. And so things are still fresh, but so far so good,
Right. Awesome. And going back to your journey, so I'm not a software engineer myself, but I understand that, some might consider this move like brave, or I want to understand what the, I guess, moment was for you when you decided to take that leap and go from checkout.com to like Casa. What was that transition like? What all was going through your head at that point? What did the road look like for you?
I honestly think for most people from an engineering background, they really, really do need to learn leadership skills, managerial skills, and the ability to sell. And that's probably the biggest learning curve that you're going to hit when you do become a founder. Oftentimes, that's the reason that some investors want to eliminate key man risk and enforce that there's a co-founder. It's also the reason that YC, I think, optimizes for co-founder pairs and matches. Most of that is that deeply technical people or people from an engineering background have never really had experience selling to others. Now, for myself, the reason we went for Casa specifically is my family was in real estate. My auntie was an estate agent. I'd seen so many different transactions. I'd been involved in managing properties on a rental level. And I think I'd had sales ability, to some degree. There was a few anecdotes I could tell. I've traded 4 lanyards for $85 worth of food before. And so it's not my first rodeo with regards to sales. As I said earlier, I'd ran a couple agencies. And so understanding like how do we deliver things people want to people was something I had. Maybe we shouldn't have gone direct to consumer straight away with an AI product in a market where AI was just emerging. Like if we think about it, ChatGPT is 2 and a bit years old, almost 3 years old, right? And so all of this stuff is happening really quickly. If you want to be on the frontier, you run that risk of being too early, so to speak. I do think that a consumer rental agent is going to become standard. I often used to say, even when we were building Casa, that Perplexity was our biggest threat, right? Like I didn't actually worry about the incumbents at all. I still don't. I don't think that the Redfins and the Zillows or whatever are actually going to do anything. Like Zillow has been losing money for the last 15 years. They're not a threat. Like people would come in, and oftentimes I think investors have this view of young founders building in real estate, that they're naive and that they only solve for this problem because it's something that they know, right? Like renting is tough. And I would speak to young people and they'd be like, oh, like it's so easy. We're going to disrupt this. And I'm like, oh, so you want to be the biggest loser, right? Like you want to be better than Zillow. You want to be the biggest loser. Like your ambition is to be the biggest loser. Like they are a big loser and you want to lose more than they lose, right? Like that's what it's going to take to win. So for us, it wasn't about that. It was like, how can we build a utility? And I think a lot of like these consumer facing AI products are starting to kind of get there in an agnostic way. So Perplexity now has like Perplexity for finance and Perplexity for education and like all these different tertiary tools that they provide on top of the basically search platform. More of that is going to happen. Maybe it happens in real estate. Real estate is obviously a very deep domain. And so that could go in any direction. I don't speculate on it anymore, given that we're not in that field. But yeah, like for me, the engineering transition was largely around how do you get the world to believe in what you're doing? How do you get to thousands of users? It's all the softer skills, taste, as they say, the hot word on the West Coast right now. It's like it's all just taste. Most engineers don't have good taste, quite frankly.
So help me understand this thing real quick, right? Casa was initially a marketplace platform. Is that correct?
The idea was a marketplace platform, and then we realized very quickly that the cold start problem is really tough to get past.
Yeah.
And so we began thinking like, okay, how can we apply utility to things? So what it would do is notify people in real time of rentals on the market in hot cities. So we operated in the UK, but the plan was to launch in New York, Dubai, any of these supply constrained cities where it's really hard to find a desirable place to live. And the idea is that the second something comes on the market, you get notified in real time, and you can command your AI agent as a rental agent, the same way that an ultra wealthy person could with a broker, to say like, hey, put an offer in on this one, book me a viewing on this one. And then it would go through and do all these like workflows that are required to follow up to secure the place. So how can it push the agent who's representing that rental, or if it's directly with the landlord, how can it push the landlord to kind of make sure that you are the best candidate for that?
And then when you go from having a business that you're confident in and then you've put so much energy into, right? And for me, from the outside looking in as for founders, seems like the hardest decision to make to me. How do you go and make that call of needing to shut it down, or when does that process kick in, right? What is your thinking throughout that whole process?
I think everybody's different. I think part of being a founder is being stubborn. And oftentimes I'll make a decision knowing I'm stubborn and knowing that I will look back on it and think funnily about it. But there was a moment in March where we were exploring building a B2B product with a design partner and kind of somewhat understanding what it is. Like we hadn't written any code for it, whatever. And I spoke to a friend who'd recently gone through YC in Dubai. And he goes to me, well, so at the time we were ramping up our monthly active users for the consumer product, and we were starting to see an uptick in paying users too. And he was like, okay, so if you hit the milestone that you want to hit, are you still going to launch the B2B product? And I was like, yeah, I think so. I was like, to me, I see this as we build a B2B facing product and we build a consumer facing product. And there is this eventual path where they unify. And that's where it becomes like perplexity for real estate or whatever one-liner you want to give to it. And it was funny that like, you almost feel like you can do everything. And that's like the biggest mistake that you can make as a founder in every single aspect is you cannot do everything. You need to laser in on doing one thing really well. And he was like, oh, well, if you succeed, you fail. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, if you succeed, the support burden you're going to have from having even more monthly active users. For us, it was like the free users would complain, but it was okay because we wouldn't have to prioritize knowing that like, okay, as long as the reputational damage isn't strong, we have this time, or oh, we can put this on the backlog, whatever. Now, if we had that support burden and we had a B2B facing product where we have service agreements with businesses, then we have double the administrative load as an early stage team. And so it just doesn't work, right? Especially in early stage startups, you really need to know who you're serving. And that's maybe 25% of the game. It's like, who are you serving? There's obviously other aspects like who's willing to pay you for the thing that you're serving them, et cetera, but you need to figure out like who do you actually care about.
But looking at this from like an investor's perspective, right? Like if you have that burden of trying to support all these people, isn't that a good thing? That's usually a good signal that you have people willing to use your product. So why that shift then?
Correct. It all depends on like, I guess, not just unit economics, but like what is the long-term thing here? Casa could have been something great. It still can. And people are going to go out there and do it. I'll even plug them now, right? We had a competitor adjacent called Jitty, right? They're a great team. It's a great product. I don't think they were going to go down the same angle as us just based on their vision on things. But potentially, as it stands today, there's nobody else with a product as good out there with regards to automation of rental workflows, of the things required to rent. And there's different people at different stages of the pipeline. There's people building AI for conveyancing, that's in like the purchasing process. There's people building AI for solicitors, which is obviously also involved in real estate deals. There's these different steps that happen during deal making. But as far as search and discovery, there's nobody out there with an AI product regarding search and discovery, at least for rentals, that is good or as good as what we had. Could it have been a lucrative business? Yes, but investors don't want that. And so when you say investors, I'm assuming you mean venture. Venture capitalists want 100x return, right? And that's just to do with the dynamics of their own funds. Because their funds are going to lose more than they win, they need to make sure that every bet that they make potentially could be a large enough win to cancel out the losses. And so Casa realistically, it sounds bad saying it, but it just couldn't have been that, right? Like to 100x would have been really, really tough. We wanted to launch in 2 more cities. That was the plan. And then we killed that plan in Q2. And so we actually had planned to launch in New York and in Dubai. But again, the increase in those thousands of users would not increase the bottom line. And you notice this with a lot of consumer facing products, is it's really tough to balance that like conversion. Perplexity have it, you know? How many people actually pay for Perplexity? It's this running meme on Twitter. It's like everybody gets it for free. Students get it for free. Teachers get it for free. Researchers get it for free. People who pay for a free trial one time get an extra 9 months for free. It's like they do so many deals that they are basically giving this away for free. And it's the venture funding that is allowing them to do that. And so how sustainable of a business is that? Nobody knows. And so there's this common saying that people say is like, in startups, you either need to chase profitability or growth, not both, you know? And for us, it was really tough to make that call with Casa. Is like, do we focus on converting our existing active users into paying users, in which case we become this bootstrap sustainable business where we make a steady income? Or do we pursue growth, which is the venture scale thing that we want? This is like the absolute huge outcome. And that would have been much tougher, you know, financially.
But then at that point, when you're making that decision, like you were mentioning earlier about prioritizing or deciding who is it that you really want to serve, right? Did that conversation ever come up for Casa when you were thinking of either shutting it down or maybe, you know, pivoting and focusing on the B2B side of it, because maybe the check size or the contract sizes there will be bigger and more lucrative to the business, or as opposed to keeping the growth going on the customer side of things? Did that conversation take place? Or did you prioritize shutting it down as opposed to stretching too thin?
There was like it wasn't a clear, I would say like, yeah, maybe a random Friday, I don't know. But it was a natural path. It's easy in retrospect to see it as milestones, but as far as like, as you're mentally going through it, it's this natural path of like company self-discovery, right? Where we knew that we were going to serve businesses. My idea was that we just put it into maintenance mode. In fact, we even emailed all our users saying with Casa that this is in maintenance mode, that we won't be shipping any new features, that we won't be doing any further improvements to the product. Only like critical bugs would be fixed. And even then we didn't have the bandwidth for it. Internally, we were saying that 5% of our time max should be allocated to the consumer product. And then we spent a bunch of time exploring the B2B side of things. We found a design partner. We started early pilots. We began building these integrations. There was also a period of time where we didn't know what the product should be. And that's where you don't want to shut down the consumer thing, because you know what the consumer thing should be, as Rudy just said, right? It's like people are using it. And so could we look into PostHog and start looking at our usage analytics and whatever? We could. But it was quite clear at that point, for kind of reasons that you said, that the contract value is much higher and that the potential is much greater with the B2B thing. First, it was purely a business thing. It was like, hey, maybe this can be the next leap for Casa. And then it started to like, that conviction became clear, you know? It was the closest thing we felt, and still remains that way, to a market pull. It almost feels like a no-brainer. The things that we built and the things that we began exploring started to just feel more and more natural, right? We tinker where we can. We'd done a couple hackathons last year. I don't think I'll do many now. A few people invite me to them here and there. It's like, hey, this hack is happening, and it's like a high signal hack or whatever, and I'm just not focused. Right now, I'm very much in the mindset of just customers and product. But the path to getting there is like, you slowly build this conviction, and then you look back and it's like, this isn't even the thing that we originally set out to do, right? Like, this isn't Casa anymore. So why does Casa exist, right? And why are we obsessed with maintaining that this thing must exist and that it must be a pivot and whatever? It's like, it's not a pivot. This is a totally new thing. New legal entity, new company, new everything. Everything about it is new. And so why are we maintaining the same brand, you know?
That makes sense. I also want to get your thoughts about this one thing that we talked about when we met at the Shopify Builder Sunday event last week. So I'm sure you're aware, but there's this huge movement around building in public in the startup world, especially on Twitter, where founders are sharing their journeys, metrics, failures, wins, everything openly. But at least according to what I remember, you mentioned being against building in public, especially for B2B SaaS. What was the reasoning behind that stance?
I think both personal experience in the recent months, firstly, and secondly, it's all anecdotal. I think I'd said that to you, right? Is like, for any, it's very hard to draw signal from the noise. So for any given point that someone makes, there is a counterpoint. I understand the building in public thing. Like when people tell me like, oh, you should build in public, this is this. I don't think they're wrong. I just don't believe it's strictly necessary right now. And the other thing about opinions is that they change over time, right? And so what I think about this now, maybe I'm wrong in 2-3 months. I don't particularly care. I don't think it's difficult to switch to building in public because I've done it before. And so I think that the reason it's often advice that's given is that you need to get those reps in. You need to get comfortable being on camera. You need to get comfortable sharing your work with people when it's not ready. Now, I've been doing that from week one of Casa, right? Casa was like 100 lines of code originally. It was like these scrappy Figma designs. I remember even when I was at checkout, I had this Figma design. I'd gone to New York on vacation and I'd just shown some random guys at a ramen spot behind me just to kind of see like, what do they think of applying AI to real estate? Didn't even know what the product was going to be. It was literally like this crappy Figma. The color palette was entirely brown. And I'm like, hey, if this thing was real, like, what do you think? I didn't even know what good questions to ask, right? I hadn't read the mom test. I didn't know any of this like tech bro advice. I kind of just like share what I'm working on, you know? The upside in B2B, depending on the vertical and domain that you're in, is less clear. And all the people who say building public in B2B, I would argue there's not many, but those who do have never done it, right? Like I'm not seeing, I don't want to name drop certain companies who are doing really well right now, but of the companies in my network who are doing really well, some who are raising from A16Z, some who have raised from some of Europe's biggest investors, etc., they're almost always in stuff. Like literally, maybe Speedrun Demo Day is coming up. The number of companies on Speedrun Demo Day that nobody will have heard of is going to be funny relative to YC, right? Where YC has this very much like, you do a launch video, you spend 5, 10, 15K on a launch video, and then it gets you a bunch of inbound. And so like you get a lot of prospects, but how many of them are high intent? How many of them are actually going to buy? It's like you're not focusing on customers and product. And now as a second time founder, it's much clearer to me the kinds of things that I should be doing and shouldn't be doing, which is we should build something better than everything out there, ideally novel and new that creates more value than just captures. And we should be getting that in the hands of our customers and seeing how they want to take things. Building in public isn't going to give that feedback. It's going to give you this fake dopamine. It's going to give you whatever else, but maybe you'll learn if you're someone who's not got your reps in, you know? Let me think of maybe a gym example, right? If I cut down a tree and it crushed you and you began doing this, your chest is going to grow, but you should probably just get on the bench press every week, man. You know, like we shouldn't need to cut down a tree and let it fall on you every week. And so that's the building in public is like, yeah, maybe you need to go through some struggle to kind of figure out how to bench press. But after that, just go get your reps in, you know, like just go do the work. And I think that's currently where my head's at. I'm not sure.
Does it affect your relationship with sharing and communicating your struggles, what you're working with your peers who are also building in the community in like a private setting or on a personal one-to-one basis when you're sharing your experiences or maybe like trying to get their insight on something you're working on or vice versa? Does it affect that in any way, this opinion that you hold about building in public or, you know, trying to maintain a competitive edge still?
Yeah, so I'd say firstly, it's only been like 5-6 months where I've taken this stance of being less public. Secondly, I've built some degree of a personal brand and some level of candor with people. I think people know that I trust them or they trust me or whatever. And so I speak somewhat freely. As far as like the war room stories of just deal making and that kind of thing, talking to your friends about this stuff never solves it, right? Like I'm in a bunch of group chats where people can ask for advice around specific scenarios, but I can anonymize those scenarios and still get good advice. No amount of me talking in detail about the problem is going to give me meaningful advice, you know, at least not from your peers. Maybe it does from your investors. Maybe it does from people who have like skin in the game, so to speak. But when people don't have skin in the game, the advice they give you is exactly that. It's just advice. And you can get that without them knowing everything you're doing. I have friends now who call me and they might be going through something with a co-founder or whatever. They can just strip the name out. They can strip what the company does out. And the advice is going to be the same because I'm not living it, you know? Yeah, so far so good. It's not really impacted my personal relationships outside of, again, like some materials and whatever and personal stuff that has happened, which is kind of the reason I want to be in stealth, is that I've noticed that everyone around me who's doing really well oftentimes doesn't announce that they're out of stealth until they're beyond like 500K ARR. And so I just don't see the pressure. I don't think a company that's doing like 10K, 1K, 2K ARR is going to get much upside. And again, we see this, it is kind of like a byproduct of YC culture. We see this early stage thing of everybody thinks XYZ companies doing really well, but most of them aren't, right? That's another thing you see in SF is like, even with the fundraising, most companies are not raising these like crazy whatever. We're just in a very strange time with AI, you know? The valuations suck. People are giving up a third of their company. So oftentimes people don't have like negotiation room or whatever. Oftentimes deal terms are disgusting. Liquidity preference happens. Like there's so many weird anecdotal things. And it's strange because every single guest you're going to get on this podcast is going to have different anecdotes and different opinions. even when we hear the same stories. It's like we'll just process those stories in different ways.
I think in terms of moving forward as well, just I like that we've transitioned a bit to hearing about your personal side and your, some of your opinions about working in public. And I think this is something we like to do with all of our guests. Like, really like to reserve some time at the end to try and get to know them a bit more personally and make it a bit more fun for them as well. So we like to call these rapid fire questions. Some of them might be thinkers, fair warning. So like, take your time, like it's okay. But I'll fire us off here with, what is your go-to comfort meal after a long work day?
It was, and the reason I'm fat, fried chicken shop in London at 1, 2 a.m. when I go home from WeWork. But recently, and well, number one, I've not been in London a lot, and number two, I found a jerk spot here in Toronto for the last week, so it's probably jerk chicken, really late at night.
Okay, awesome.
That's fair. Yeah. Would you rather spend a day at a cabin in the woods coding by yourself, or like pursuing your favorite hobby, whatever it may be?
Favorite hobby? I play basketball. I love basketball. Like everywhere I go, I try to form some level of community and just like get people getting.
The caveat here is that the basketball would also be by yourself in the cabin in the woods.
Cabin in the woods.
I mean,
Call me
you
a
could
bad
work on
engineer,
your jump
man.
shot.
Yeah, I was gonna say basketball. Give me basketball. Call me a bad engineer. I don't care about the cabin in the woods.
Yeah. Do you have a team?
A little bit, yeah. I can't say this. Everyone's gonna think I'm like a fanboy, right?
No,
My team is
nobody's
the
gonna say
Heat, but
anything.
then when LeBron left the Heat, it's
Yeah.
also like whoever LeBron's playing for. But if
Yeah.
LeBron plays the Heat, then I would still support the Heat. So like technically, it's Miami.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you have an allegiance then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, what's the most random thing you've ever built just for fun?
We built a COVID escape running game. You know, like a Temple Run. We were the first
Yeah.
COVID related game on the Android Play Store. We built that in 16 days. I basically slept for like 3, 4
Wow.
hours a day, eating 1, 2 meals every 14 hours, waking up naturally, no alarm to just like if statements in my brain and just thinking of code. I hated doing it at the time, but it was pretty cool. We got to, I think, like 500 users in 2 days. There was a leaderboard, but it wasn't like cloud based. And so it was funny because like it was local. And so you're just competing with yourself. And then we had a bunch of features planned. People reached out to me from loads of different countries around the world asking like, how did you get on the store? We had these hurdles that we had to get around because you can't make apps around world events. And so, yeah, that was literally on one day's notice. They'd announced the first lockdown. I was like, God, I have a feeling this is going to be a while and we could probably be first to something. So like, let's just ship. I never built an app too. Nothing serious.
That's pretty cool. If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, one on one, who would it be?
Hmm. This is a strange question. Let me think. I'm gonna say Steve Jobs. That's so corny, but like I was trying to think of someone who I was gonna go Walt Disney, but maybe I want someone in tech, so maybe I'd go with Steve Jobs.
That's pretty good. What would be your go-to tech gadget or your, guilty pleasure tech gadget that you just can't live without?
Hmm. I guess a phone. I mean, I can live without a phone though. So like, I don't know what tech. I'm trying to think what I use every day. A phone, a laptop, a car. I don't even use a car every day. RFID tags, things that help my day-to-day life. I don't feel like I'm super tech-centric for someone who's in tech, you know?
No, I think a phone is a valid answer. On a similar tone, what is one app or tool you think is totally underrated?
I'm trying to plug my boys right now. I'm trying to think who. I don't want to say granola. I always shill granola so hard and I get nothing for it. There's no kickback. If any of the granola team see this, they owe me some money. But granola is, in my opinion, the best note-taking thing. I've not tried Notion. I've not tried Fireflies. I've not tried anything else. But granola is cool. It's no longer underrated, but there was a time where it was. And I was their biggest hater as well. I used to think it was stupid, but now I'm like power user. Um, I think I'd go with that. Maybe Cursor too. But again, these aren't underrated, right? Like I told you, I'm so basic. I don't have the time to find underground things. So I just go with the things that everyone's already using.
Hey, maybe you think they're underrated. They could be. You never know. Sky's the limit.
True,
They're $1 trillion worth companies today. So
true.
anyway, um, if you could instantly master any skill overnight, what would it be?
It's funny because we just talked about basketball, so I want to say basketball so badly. It would be cool to just be like NBA ready overnight. Like you just pull up and like
Right.
all of a sudden you make the league because nothing. Like you just woke up. I feel like
Yeah.
that's something from a movie, but that or sales. Like again, I feel like even a master of sales doesn't win every deal, and so there's kind of this like beauty to it where you you can be really good and you just need to accept loss. Like you will lose some deals and you will win some deals, and that's the game. You know, you want a high win rate, but you're never going to have 100% win rate. And if you do, I would attribute it to luck more than your sales skill.
For a second, I thought you were talking about sailing, and I was trying to make a
No,
connection. Oh, what you're talking about.
no, like product sales.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, if you could go back and give advice to yourself when you were just starting out your tech career, what would you say?
I can't think. There's so much, right? I feel like I've learned way, way, way more than my peers who just stuck to being just engineers. No disrespect to anybody who wants to do that. But I would say a universal piece of advice, if you're sociable or if you can move to a new place or experience new things, is as young as you possibly can, you need to get to SF or you need to get to somewhere on the West Coast where there's like a tech scene. Um, and you need to really immerse it. Honestly, there is nowhere like SF. It sounds like I'm glazing. I've said this a lot over the last couple of months. I think it is just SF. You can't go to San Jose. You can't go to like, no, just go to SF. So you could be 15, 16, whatever. But you can't go there and do all the touristy things and go on Luma and just go to every event and whatever. You're not going to have the same experience. I think you need to go and kind of find the people who are not trying to go to things, you know? Like SF is funny because it's a place where everyone sleeps at like 8 p.m. But if you do find those people who are grinding till 11 p.m., 1 a.m., whatever, um, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn a lot, honestly, just about like, this is where the bar is. You know what I mean? Like, people don't have time to be grueling it out for 12 months because they need traction, right? It's like traction over everything. And so the bar's really high. I remember someone I know who spent 3 months there goes out there and they were at McKinsey before. And they're like, when I was at McKinsey, I was just a consultant and I was grinding nonstop. And I thought that that's what hard work was. And it's funny that they were running a company and hadn't done that running their company until they went to SF. And SF kind of gave them the McKinsey hours, but for their own company. It kind of put this pressure on them of like, you are going to grind nonstop for 3 months and treat this as though you were working for someone at McKinsey and you have to do these like 996 or whatever. You're just doing it for the love of the game, you know?
The one like big aspect that gets taken out of like say somebody grinding for McKinsey or at an investment bank is the agency of it gets taken out. You're not the one who's setting these goals for yourself. You're not the one who's like putting lighting that fire under yourself, right?
Mm.
And I think the aspect of introducing that kind of changes the whole motivation as well, or your perspective on the whole goal setting idea of it. Um, okay, next question is if your life was a movie, what would it be titled?
I messaged this to a friend the other day. I'm in a group chat with two friends. We used to work late and like grind into the nights. And one of them missed a call that we got on like a few days ago. And he was like, oh, what did you guys talk about? And I responded with like, uh, life, love, loss, or something like that. Like, I don't know. It would be a combo of those three words: life, love, loss. You
Okay.
know? I feel like that would be a cool movie title.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's fair.
poignant.
Okay, last rapid fire question. Arguably the most important one. Cats or
This is
dogs?
true.
Cats. Everyone's gonna hate me, but cats. Yeah.
No,
Sounds
there's quite a few people who've said cats here. I don't think you're alone in this.
okay.
But it's neither of us, but like there's still a lot of people who say cats
I
here.
think they're less needy. You know. I feel like I don't want something
Hmm.
that's super needy and like yeah.
Oh,
I already have
The one we
responsibilities.
get, the one we get commonly is people want a dog with a cat's personality. You know?
That would be cool.
I think we get that a lot.
one
Yeah,
a
yeah.
couple of episodes ago, we had a guy who said he wanted a cat because his previous cats had died or something like that, and it caught us off guard in the middle of the episode. And it's an iconic moment. I'd like to think.
Yeah. Shout out to Anderson. It was a great episode, but he caught us completely off guard. And for 5 seconds, Judy and I were like, "Oh my God, I want to laugh. I can't laugh." And then he started laughing, and then we were like, "Oh, thank God."
Okay, and with that, we come to the conclusion of this episode. Thank you for coming on. Before we wrap it up, do you have any words of wisdom or any final advice for anybody listening?
Just you can just do things. I hate stealing all the like Sam Altman, whatever tech bro thing, but like you can. I came here on 24 hours notice. You know what I mean? Everything falls into place in the end. You just need to like. I can't swear, so I'm not gonna. Don't be a enter blank. You know what that last word is. Just don't be that last word. You know? Don't be a loads of underscores. I think 6 underscores. All right. Um, that's it basically. Just like do things, especially if you have your youth. Otherwise, I don't know. Honestly, I think that's my best word of advice. Someone I know who's 18 years old used to be this kind of person where it's like, oh, there's no engineering roles, there's no whatever. And it's like, I get sent companies that are hiring all the time. And so things are out there. You just can't send them your sloppy CV that says that you were like in big tech working on making a button red or green because they don't care. But I'm sure if you sent a blimp by their office and just did things, that they'd be way more likely to take you seriously. And so my advice is just whatever is the thing you want to do, don't box yourself in with the thoughts of the environment that you're in or what is traditional. If you're in a place where people send CVs, they're stupid. Be better than that.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you guys. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Rowan.